Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. So this video is a collaboration with my friend EDDEN. She does have a lifestyle YouTube channel, so I will go ahead and link that below. Today's collaboration is for a traditional tres leches cake, and on her channel we will be doing this recipe in Spanish and you will be able to see us making it. On this video, we will go ahead and show you the recipe from beginning to end. So make sure you subscribe to her channel, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. The first thing we need to do is to go ahead and separate our egg yolks from our egg whites in two separate bowls. First off, we are going to go ahead and whip our egg whites for approximately 5 minutes in total. For the first part, we are going to whip on medium speed for 2.5 minutes. As time passes, you will notice that the egg whites will get frothier, a lot more foamy, and they will start getting lighter in color. Once we reach this consistency, or approximately at the 2.5 minute mark, we are going to go ahead and add half of the sugar that our recipe calls for, and we are going to continue to whip the egg whites, and we're going to form a sort of silky white fluffy meringue. After adding the sugar, we're going to continue to mix on medium speed for another 2.5 minutes until we do complete the 5-minute mark, and the consistency that we are looking for is medium to stiff peaks. Once we reach this consistency, we are going to place our egg whites aside for later use. We are going to repeat the same steps with our egg yolks, and we are going to mix our egg yolks for a total of 5 minutes. For this first step, we will mix for approximately 2.5 minutes until our egg yolks start losing a little bit of color and they're going to start looking a little bit of a pastel yellow. Once our egg yolks start looking pastel yellow, we are going to go ahead and add the other half of sugar, and we are going to continue to mix for another 2.5 minutes, and you are going to continue to see that your egg yolks will start to lose even more color and your mixture will be very light yellow. To recap, the total time that we are mixing is 5 minutes, and we mixed our entire mixture on medium speed. At this point, we are about ready to move on to our next step. I am going to go ahead and add the zest of a tiny orange and also my vanilla. Please keep in mind that the citrus, in case you add any zest of lemon, zest of a mandarin, or of any citrus fruit, this is totally optional, but it is the traditional way to make a Mexican tres leches cake, so I did go ahead and add the zest of a tiny orange, and I am going to continue to mix this until all my ingredients incorporate. At this point, I am also going to go ahead and add in my milk while still keeping my hand mixer on. At the end of this step, you should be left with a frothy, bubbly mixture, and we are ready to move on to the next step. Now we are going to go ahead and incorporate our egg whites with our egg yolk mixture, and what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of the egg whites first and just kind of incorporate it into my egg yolk mixture before adding the rest. Once I've incorporated this a tiny little bit, I go ahead and add in the rest of the egg whites, and I always try to remember to be very gentle because we don't want our egg whites to deflate, because this is what's going to give our cake the texture. We are going to continue to incorporate both of these mixtures until we have one unified mixture and we can no longer see white or yellow separately. I also like to add in my dry ingredients using a sieve because I do find that sometimes there is lumps and bumps in my sugar or in some of my dry ingredients, and this just helps to give us a much smoother batter. So I did go ahead and place my flour, baking powder, and salt into the sieve, and I did just go ahead and place it right into both of the mixtures that I have in my bowl. And as before, we are simply going to use a spatula to keep incorporating the rest of our ingredients together. We don't want to add too much force, and we also want to remember not to deflate any of the egg whites because, like I mentioned earlier, this is what gives our cake the texture. You'll find that this method is a little bit time consuming, but in the end, the result is a spongy, yummy, and delicious cake, so it's totally worth all the effort. I went ahead and prepared a disposable baking pan. This is a 9x13 and I just simply sprayed it with some baking spray. I used Pan, but you can totally use any brand that you have at home. Once my pan was prepared, I did go ahead and pour in all of my mixture, and we also have to remember not to tap our pan to make sure that our mixture is completely even. I am going to use a little spatula to even everything out because we don't want to deflate any of the bubbles that are in there. I did go ahead and bake my cake at a 325-degree oven for approximately 28 to 30 minutes. When my cake came out of the oven, I did leave it in the baking pan for approximately 10 minutes, and then I proceeded to take it out of the pan so that it would be able to cool on a cooling rack for approximately 30 to 40 minutes. So basically the idea is that we don't want the bottom to get squishy or mushy because we will be adding 3 milks, so we want to make sure that we have a consistent cake but not a mushy cake at the bottom, and you'll see exactly what I mean at the end of the video. For our traditional 3 milks, I will be using half and half, evaporated milk and sweetened condensed milk. I did start to pour everything into this tiny little bowl, but then I proceeded to change everything into a deeper bowl. Don't forget to check the description box below for all the measurements of what we use to make the 3 milks. Once I had everything into one bowl, I made sure to continuously whisk just to make sure that everything incorporates. And as a traditional tres leches, I did go ahead and add Mexican vanilla. As soon as I was done mixing my 3 milks, I did go ahead and place them in the refrigerator just to make sure to keep them cool for when I'm ready to pour them into my sponge cake. Now comes the fun part where we start adding the milks. My cake did have a few hours to cool down. I went ahead and placed it back into the same baking pan. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use half of the tres leches mixture that we made, and I'm going to go ahead and bathe and soak my cake in it. To ensure that your sponge cake absorbs the milk very well, I do recommend that you poke tiny little holes with a skewer or with a fork and then pour the milk. This will just make sure that every single little crevice and space of your sponge cake gets soaked in this delicious milk. Remember to make sure to save at least 1 cup or half of your tres leches mixture so that we can place this into the refrigerator for approximately 2 to 3 hours. And then once we take it out, we will place it into a tiny bath again, and we will pour the remaining of our 3 milks. So before I placed it into my refrigerator, I did just go ahead and place a little bit of plastic over the top, and then this mold or this cake pan also came with a top. So I went ahead and placed the top on there as well, and then placed it into the refrigerator because I just want to make sure that it does not lose any moisture and that it does not dry out. Obviously it won't because it has tres leches, but I was just a little bit overprotective with this cake because I was very excited for it. So now it's going to go into the refrigerator for 2 to 3 hours, or possibly, and if you can, overnight. While my cake cools in the refrigerator, I did take the time to make my topping, and as you can see, my husband is helping me and he is placing the heavy whipping cream into my bowl. I do want to go ahead and add that my mixing bowl and my mixing whisk were placed in the freezer for approximately 30 minutes to 1 hour, just to make sure they were very, very cold, to ensure that our heavy whipping cream was able to whip up a lot faster. We also added in powdered sugar, and I did go ahead and start mixing at a stir level, and you'll see that we are going to go ahead and increase into a 2, 4, and 6. At this point, we did add our Mexican vanilla, and we are going to crank up the speed just a tiny bit. So for this topping, this was my first time using this Whip It stabilizer for whipping cream or whipped topping. I am going to say that I don't really recommend it because we did go ahead and whip this and it did start to deflate sooner than I thought it would. So basically, if you are needing to make this for the same day and consuming it the same day, I recommend it, because the next day when we opened our container, it was totally deflated, so we had to whip it up again. I'm not really sure if the point of this little stabilizer is to make it last, I don't know, a few hours or longer than that, but our whipping cream could have done without it. So it's totally up to you if you want to add it in. In total, we did go ahead and whip between 5 to 7 minutes. And at this point where your whipping cream starts to get a little bit curly or like curdly is when you want to stop, because if you do over mix, your whipping cream is going to start looking and feeling like butter. Here in a minute, you will see exactly the consistency that I like for my whipped topping. You might like it a little bit softer or a little bit stiffer, but this is exactly what we went for. And I also want to let you know that you can add more sugar or less sugar depending on how sweet you want this topping to be. After our cake cooled in the refrigerator, we went ahead and poured in the remainder of our tres leches, or of our 3 milks. And remember, you can definitely leave your cake overnight or between 2 to 3 hours to cool. And now comes the fun part, which is decorating. I mean, the entire thing was fun, but now we're going to go ahead and decorate. We decided to keep the decoration very simple. So the only thing we're going to do is we're simply going to go and take our whipped topping, and with a spatula, we're just going to make sure to spread the entire topping to the edges of our disposable cake pan. I highly recommend using a deep pan or even a disposable cake pan, because the 3 milks will be at the bottom of your pan. So if you do have a flatter surface, you do run the risk of it running off the edges, but this is totally up to you. And for this part, we're simply just going to keep doing this until we have a semi-smooth surface. In keeping with our traditional Mexican tres leches cake decoration, we are going to go ahead and sprinkle the top of our cake with a little bit of cinnamon. And here I'm just going to make sure that we don't sprinkle too much on it because it can be very strong. For this next part, I am going to go ahead and trace where I want to cut my cake, and it's also going to be where we're going to place our strawberries. Remember that you can cut your cake as small or as big as you want, but here we use the cut as a guide to place strawberries on top of our cake. Now comes the fun part where we actually tried our cake. It was super moist, super delicious, and as you can see, there's plenty of 3 milks at the bottom of the pan, so you can definitely add more to each of the slices that you give your guests, or for each of the slices that you eat. I really wish that you guys could taste it. It's so delicious, and it's totally worth making it. I know the process looks really difficult and time consuming, but I promise you that it's worth every single bit of the step. And here's a picture of both me and Shetara when we finished our cake. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. I will leave her link below. And don't forget to go ahead and watch the video where we made this entire cake in Spanish. And you can also see a personal appearance from both of us on her channel in this video. These are also close-up pictures of how our cake looked. I really hope that you guys try this. Definitely let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe before you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!